Hello and welcome to our continuing interview series with Kevin. We're still in Palladium Fantasy Game, but today we're going to talk about a lot of books in the early line and dig a little deeper into the game itself. So let's start off with Eric's adventures. You got Eric pretty early to write Tombs, correct?
Yeah, so Eric was involved with me developing my game, giving me a lot of feedback and play test and that kind of thing. And he realized that we didn't have an adventure. And I'm like, Eric, I don't really have, the bandwidth right now to do an adventure. And of course he's like, yeah, Kev, I got this great idea. It involves vampires and Timuro. And I'm like, okay. And so he wrote what has become a really sort of a classic fan favorite, the Tombs of Gersidi. And he did the maps and everything for that. And it's great. It's a fan favorite. Folks love it. In fact, we're toying with the idea of re-releasing it with a part 2 adventure. One of my freelancers has already submitted the manuscript. I have not had a chance to look at it. So I don't want to make any promises that that's coming out, but it's one of the things we're looking at. We always have a bunch of little projects happening behind the scenes that we don't like to talk about because, we don't know if they're going to happen or when they're going to happen. So you mention it and people start going, oh, when's that Tombs of Gersidi re-release coming out? And it's like, why did I even mention it? But we're doing these interviews and I'm excited about it. And, hopefully in a year or so that'll come out.
No promises, but maybe some excitement.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know about the Tombs of Gersidi, because it's a classic adventure. It's been out of print for a while. What's the hook?
Well, I don't want to say too much because, if they're going to play it, we're going to, the book's out there. So
that's right, because it's in the original.
Yeah, it's in the original RPG, which is available as a PDF from Drive-Thru RPG.
Yes.
So I don't want to ruin it for folks who are, still have a chance to play it. So sorry about that. I just don't want to.
Oh, no, that's fine. We'll have links in the show notes to the original PDF that you can get, and then you too can play through the Tombs of Gersidi. Now, you did a bunch of the art. I'm looking at our notes. We have, the coins of the realm. We have the runes, the wards, the magic symbols, the circles, which for me were very evocative. The first time we were playing through, I was reading through Palladium Fantasy. So where did all the sigils come from? Where did all the wards and the circles?
So there's some of the coins, which sounds weird. But it's fun.
It's fun, and it adds verisimilitude to the world. Like, hey, here are the coins that you're collecting as you're going out or that you're spending. Here's the ones for the Old Kingdom.
So there's an example of some wards and some circles. I wanted to make my game unique. One of the things that Eric and I always like to do was push the envelope and take it beyond what people are expecting, to take it beyond what is the norm. It's just fun. And the wards and things, I made those up. I don't know exactly because they're not really based on anything. I just that artist imagination going, and I just came up with a bunch of different things. And in fact, the ward or the ruins, it's an actual language that you can, it takes a while to do the different wards and things, but you can actually spell out words and sentences using that runic alphabet. Yeah, and part of it was inspired by, Tolkien created his own languages and that kind of thing. So I thought, let's do that. This will be fun. This will be crazy fun. And, some people really got into it. Others didn't, but that's okay too.
I remember you had the the translation key in the book.
Yes. Of course.
And I remember poring over, handwritten notes that we were going to, give to players and writing them on grocery bags and then singeing the edges and soaking them in tea so they looked authentic. So where did the inspiration for the Diabolist and the Summoner? I mean, you said you wanted to make it unique because that's not something that comes out of kind of even the early D&D roots, like the Diabolist and the Summoner, as well as like the psionics and how well they were expanded and fleshed out is really something unique to Palladium Fantasy.
Thank you. I guess they really are. Again, I wanted to really create a unique world. So I had heard about, of course, ruins and old symbology. I'm a big history buff, so I'd read a lot of books on Stonehenge and the Aztec and the Mayans and the Toltec and all that kind of stuff. And Egypt, I got into that, and they have it's all pictographs and images. So I really kind of gravitated to that kind of motif. And I wanted to create things that were, had a truly unique and different feel to it. So that was the motivation. And I thought it was just fun. Like personally, I love the Diabolist and the Summoner. Yeah. You got to be really careful if you're a good guy using summoning, because that can get dangerous. Like it's dangerous whether the character is good or evil, and it tends to drive people insane. I'm sure I pulled a little bit of that inspiration from Lovecraft.
Yeah.
But, I'm kind of like a sponge. Everything gives me ideas. I look at everything. And at some point or another, it kind of gets distilled into what I'm doing.
It bubbles back up, it kind of goes into the subconscious, works its way around, and then kind of comes back up.
Well, and the way I work is like, so here's an idea. Let's go with the Diabolist. I've got this idea, and how can that work, and how can wards work, and how can that be fun in a game, of course.
Right.
Because you can't just say, oh, this is cool, and then throw it in, and people go, what the hell? So you want people to have fun with it. You want it to make sense in the world. So that takes a fair amount of time to kind of hammer that out and figure that all out and work out the mechanics for it. But when you do, it's fun. And just all of that fun, just the whole process, the challenge of it is just a blast. And then, you play test it, and it's like, oh, well, this is too slow, or this didn't really quite work, or they didn't quite understand it. And you go back in, you tweak it and tweak it and tweak it until you have something that you think, works pretty damn good. And I think the wards really do, especially, for bad guys and for NPCs. When you're done, it adds a new level of danger, which is also what I wanted to any environment. I was going to say dungeon environment, but especially dungeon environment, because, you get a chest and there's a bunch of symbols on it.
Yeah, what do you do?
It's like, yeah, exactly. Are you going to pick that lock and hope for the best? Or, are they deactivated? Are they, have they all been activated? And plus I love that thing where, oh, hey, there's a chest and it's got all these symbols on it. And, oh gosh, there's also 5 corpses around it in various degrees of decomposition. Hopefully that tells the players that, maybe there's something bad here.
Maybe give the players some cues and then let them make their own decisions.
So, it just adds a whole new element. And then as a player character, I love the Diabolist. And some people complain that, well, you got to do a lot of planning and thinking ahead. And, in actual combat, they're not that powerful. And it's like, yes, and yes. But it makes the character different and interesting. You got to really think about how you're going to use this character.
Yeah.
And again, it falls back to the game master where, he's got to try to make sure that this character has something to do at varying moments. And even in battle, if the character is not fighting or can't even use a ward, does he notice this or notice that or find, some important information or, there's something written on the wall in runes and, hey, guess what? He's the only one who can read it. These are all elements that make the character valuable and important if a good game master, make sure those elements are there for the character to play upon.
Right. They are not their immediate use in killing the thing in front of you is not always readily apparent, but their utility use throughout the rest of the campaign can't be underestimated.
Well, I think part of it too is in my game system, it's not all about killing. That's just all there is to it. I wanted to create a thinking man's game, and of course, there's players. And by the way, power gamers, that's fine. Yeah. I've run plenty of power gamer campaigns, and people have gone wild over them. But generally, I like a game that's a bit more cerebral, that has a bit of mystery and intrigue and politics, and you got to navigate all those things. But, like the comic books, again, my background in comic books, they have all that kind of stuff in them. And of course, they culminate into the big battle. So
they fight at the end of the end of the issue or the end of the arc.
Yeah. So, I like all of that. I wanted to create a game that was a bit more cerebral, a bit more original, a lot more original. And I tried to create characters. From the very beginning, I was creating, in my mind, a megaversal game system where you could have magic and technology and horror and adventure and dimensional travel and the whole 9 yards. And you see those elements that are there. And again, realizing that every player is different, every game master is different. That's what I love about role-playing. It's all very personal.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the characters there to play any kind of adventure. And if you're into, combat and a lot of fighting, then yeah, for God's sakes, don't take a Diabolist or a Summoner.
Yeah, no.
Or a Scholar or any of those that are going to have a limited capacity or get themselves killed in 5 minutes. If the campaign is a big battle kind of thing, then pick the characters that are appropriate for that. And that's where I think Game Master should give a clue to their players about what they can do. And so they can build their characters appropriately and their team appropriately. I'm a big, let's build a team.
Yeah, it's a group activity, but two, it kind of goes back to the comic book roots, right? The X-Men are, how often are the X-Men like, especially when Claremont expands the run? Okay, well, this threat's over there, so you guys have to go deal with that threat because you are the ones most capable of doing something like that. Or the big Avengers roster or the Justice League roster, kind of the same thing. We're coming together, and most teams come together for a specific purpose at the start.
Right. Although, really, if you think about it, it's the fundamental of any kind of storytelling game.
Mm-hmm.
Or story, even. Mm-hmm. You need, unless you have one really strong character, say like Conan or Mowgli in Jungle Book, or Indiana Jones is another great example. But they have their buddies who help them along the way, or they're not going to make it. But think about it, virtually, well, I was going to say all, but that's not true. Most video games, they take a lot of their, especially ones that are role-playing games, they take their cue from original role-playing games, and so you have what they call the tank. That's the guy who's really strong, and you've got the healer, and you've got the spy or the thief or the sneaky guy, and you have all these different elements that are drawn from traditional pen and paper role-playing games. But largely because if you're playing, anything that's even remotely a team, you need that guy who, oh my gosh, I'm bleeding out. Don't worry, I can heal you.
That's right.
Oh man, the frickin' door is locked. Don't worry, I can pick it. you want those elements, and so when people create a game or create characters for a role-playing game, I think a lot of times they take that into consideration.
Yeah.
And have a nice variation of, okay, this guy's the mage, this guy's the fighter, this guy's the healer, this guy is the thief. And then depending on how large your group is, you can get more and more varied or more and more specific.
Right. So who did the original map of the Palladium world?
That was me. One of the things I did right away with the Defilers was start doing maps, and they loved them. And in fact, I had a guy who worked at like a blueprint place, and they surprised me and came in with this gigantic poster size of a couple of my maps, mainly the Northern Wilderness and the Land of the Damned. And I just expanded it from there.
Are we ever going to see a big poster map of the Palladium fantasy world? Because
you never know.
I've got Glorantha, like the 6 poster map over there. I've got an Estrin map and my old world maps, and I'm like, man, I really just need a Palladium map, kind of like right there on the wall.
Hey, never know.
I mean, it's you always say the universe is full of possibilities, right? So
that's right.
All right. So let's jump to the old ones.
I do want to mention something about ruins, if I can.
Yeah, please do.
Just something that's fun is some of the artists, including Keith Parkinson, and this is a pretty famous cover of his. Yep. He calls it the Arcane Summon. Used to be a big poster. I don't know if it's still available, or print, I should say, high quality print. It's a pretty famous piece. It's a very dramatic piece. I mean, you've got this, Wolfen Summoner raising the dead out of a frozen lake. It's a beautiful painting, and on his tassels are my ruins, the runic language.
Yeah.
And in this very dramatic piece, if you translate it, it says, "Boy, what a tough job I've got."
And didn't that show up again on the Leyline Walker art?
Not those words, but
but the runes.
Yeah, Kevin Long did it. A couple other artists from time to time will take our symbols and put them in because they look cool, or put in the ruins and say something like, I'm a badass, or I'm a tough guy, or watch out, or whatever it is. I'm godly, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, let's talk the old ones. Now, we get our first source book. You did the original
current edition.
Yeah, that's you did the original one, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's my art.
So Palladium Fantasy kind of has this, the world was created by the old ones, and then the gods show up. And one of the big shifting points is when Thoth shows up. And we get that in the fragments of the histories that are given to us in the core rule book, but it's in the old ones book that we find out, there's some twists, there's some turns here. So how early on did this idea of the alien intelligences or the old ones like kind of germinate in the original world design?
Pretty much immediately.
Okay.
I again, to make it very unique world, I created this history. And Wojcik was also a huge history buff, even more so than I am. And so he loved the idea of having this rich, deep history. So I ran with it and had a lot of fun with it. So the old ones were basically evil incarnate.
Yeah.
And they were so powerful that even when various gods and all these different races joined forces to fight them, because the old ones, not only were they evil, but they were forces of chaos. And so the forces of light and order conspired and joined this humongous battle to put an end to the old ones, but they couldn't destroy them. So they finally created a magic, thanks to Thoth,
to
put them to sleep. So the old ones, no one knows where they slumber, and of course, bad guys and people who are into chaos or decide that they worship the old ones. They're always looking to find them, and you never want to wake one up, because once you wake one up, he's likely to wake them all up, and just the world will turn into this chaotic, torturous mess.
Like there are good gods and there are evil gods, but even the evil gods are preferable to the old ones being awake.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they don't want to wake them up either, because that would destroy the whole balance of power.
Yeah. So you mentioned the histories in writing. We have the Tristan Chronicles, right? These this record of history that has a lot of mystery kind of surrounding it. Is there more written? Is it something that when you're writing a book, you're like, oh, we'll develop the world a little bit more and put some of the chronicles in there? Does the Tristan Chronicles, I'm probably not as one big setting Bible, but are there fragments that have existed for a while? Are they written in silver ink, so they're on indestructible paper? Because
there are some notes about the Tristan Chronicle and some passages that I used, in my old campaign that I haven't seen print yet. But honestly, I usually create them as I need them to be a nice little opening to the book. There's a couple of Tristan Chronicle passages in the upcoming Yen Sloth expeditions.
Awesome. All right, so do we want to talk about Z?
Oh,
because that was a big deal, right? The idea that the most powerful old one tried to do something and was betrayed, and ended up becoming like the most, like the tipping point for the gods. Like, I'll let you tell the story. It's your story. Like, what was the impetus behind that? What was, like, why link this powerful old one with Thoth?
I just thought it'd be a lot of fun. Yeah, because it also makes you question, Thoth, is he really a good guy? Is he really going to help us? Could someday, because what happens is Zai becomes Thoth. And when he becomes Thoth, he goes from being evil to good. And Thoth is one of the most powerful gods in the pantheon of light or light and dark. And he's a god of knowledge and magic, because, the old ones are like the embodiment of not just evil, but not in magic. They're, presumably immortal and had been around longer than most of the other gods. So I just like that bit of, is he a good guy? Can we trust Thoth? Should we pray to Thoth? Are we really playing to an old one? But most people don't know that he's
right.
That he might. That's a rumor. He might have been
right, and he doesn't know himself.
No, and he, if someone suggested that, he'd be like, "That's ridiculous. That's not true. Come on."
So why was the Old Ones the first supplement book that you wanted to dig into? Like, what was the impetus for creating this book? Because it's chock full of, a bunch of cities with maps, adventures, the place of magic, which is this massive mega dungeon complex. I still remember the first time one of my players stepped into the water and crossed that power circle that was under the water, and slowly started turning into one of the abominations, and everybody was trying to figure out what was going on. I've run that adventure many times, but you added minotaurs as a playable species, the monk, the illusionist.
Yeah, these were all just things I really liked. When you're a game designer, ultimately, again, all your childhood influences and the things you like, leak into your books. And I always thought people never really did Minotaurs justice. In fact, you'll be seeing more with Minotaurs in a future book, because they're usually just this big slobbering monster that wants to kill you.
Right, they're the monster at the end of the maze, essentially.
Right, taken from Greek mythology. Which there's nothing wrong with that, and I've certainly used them as such. And in fact, I had them as minions of the Old Ones.
Yep.
They were like among their most famous and numerous and dangerous minions, worshippers. But it bugs me a lot of times when there's just mindless monsters. I want creatures and to have character. I want them to have personality. Now sometimes, it's just a slobbering beast. Because again, there's nothing wrong with that, and you need that. But I like to have more nuanced characters because it creates better stories and it creates a better, more compelling world. And that's what it's all about, having fun and being compelling, giving people ideas. So, I just thought the Minotaurs needed more love. And then the various places. So coming up, I realized that one of the biggest selling Judges Guild books was the city-state of the Invincible Overlord. Mm-hmm. And it was this big sprawling campaign based on the city. So I knew that. I knew people loved cities. I knew gamers love maps.
Mm-hmm. We do.
I know. So do I. So I did this. It's funny because it's called the Old Ones, but almost could be called the Big Book of Towns and Cities, because there's a gazillion different maps and things in there. I mean, a lot of stuff is in there. Like there's between the forts and towns and actual cities, there's something like 50 of them, or 58 or 55, something like that. And it was a lot of maps, but that I did. But that's okay. And I tried to make it into a story, so they're all interconnected in certain ways, or on your way to this big adventure at the back of the book, which is just fun as heck. And it wasn't my well, some of them were defilers, but I had a smaller group of playtesters play that. And, Julius was there and Alex was there, but a bunch of other folks were playing it. And like I said, probably half the group was defilers. Tom was there. Tom Bartold was there, and Steve Shearing, not playing Lord Coke. And it was fun. It was really interesting. It was just this fun thing. And I think Eric I got the idea of having this weird thing that transformed you. Eric had some kind of crazy thing like that in one of his campaigns, and I liked that idea, so I stole it.
That's just an iconic part of that dungeon that just to this day stands out. And again, if you're being careful, you can avoid it. If you're being reckless, you're probably transforming into a pseudo demon, just the way it is.
Well, and it's one of those books that really puts to work a lot of the different characters, especially the Diabolist and Summoner. All the other characters are good, but it's really helpful if you have someone who can read wards.
Mm-hmm. I think there is a warded chest. I think the example that you gave of the warded chest with several bodies, that feels familiar from Old Ones adventures that I've run. So you've got Palladium, it's doing well. You've got the Old Ones comes out. You had a couple more books kind of early on, just not tacked on, but kind of coming out on the line. Monsters and Animals.
Yeah, that was a fun book.
You did the illustration for that, correct? The original.
I did I did all the illustrations for the monsters.
Okay.
And then I did a few of some of the animals and stuff, but I had to bring in someone else to do animals. And that book is just a great reference for really any setting. because you've got the animals that can be applied to modern settings, fantasy settings, all kinds of settings. And there's like just a crap load of them. I forget how many, but hundreds. And then there's like 90, if I recall, around 90 unique specific creatures. A few of them taken from myth, but a lot of them are completely new and original. Again, there's a few that are Eric Wujcik inspired, like the Endroth and the Max Perry. I just love those creatures, and I forget why he created those for me, because those were actually in one of my Defiler adventures.
Oh.
When they ran into the Zavor also, when they went into the Land of the Damned. Some of these weird forgotten creatures exist and outside the Land of the Damned too. So like when you see them, it's like, kill it! Because you don't want them to multiply or get out into the real world and reap mayhem.
Well, I mean, anything that comes from a place called the Land of the Damned, which is not great to have roaming around, you know, the Eastern Territory or the Western Kingdom, you know.
You think?
Yeah, probably not. Well, and you mentioned last episode that your defilers would routinely go, yeah, I know we were going to go do this one thing, but what if we did not that and this completely other thing? And you were like, at one point they were like, we should become pirates.
Yes.
So you had to make up a bunch of rules around that, and that led to adventures on the high seas?
It sure did. Yes.
One of the things go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say, it was just, they were always, but to me, that's fun. As a game master and a storyteller, I like it when my players challenge me or surprise me. There were a couple of times with the Defilers where I thought, that's it, they're dead, and somebody would come up with some brilliant idea and play it out to perfection, and I'm like, oh, I love these guys.
I've heard it said, and this is, you know, there's several mantras that I'm like that get, you know, kind of become part of the language of gaming. But I like the idea that game masters create problems. We don't create solutions. It's up to the players to come up with the creative solution, because as soon as you come up with a solution to your problem, that's the only one you're going to be looking for. And if your players don't thread that needle,
that's true.
But so I'm always telling them, they're like, what do we do? I'm like, I don't know. It's not my job to come up with a solution. My job was to come up with the problem.
Well, exactly. I mean, I might give them a little bit of feedback, like, I don't know, you guys could turn around, you could try to figure this out, you could do X, Y, and Z, but, you know, you tell me what you're doing.
My players also know that if I say, are you sure you want to do that, that they need to rethink what they were, like, they haven't thought through that this could be a very deadly thing that they're about to attempt.
Absolutely. Well, and the fact that the Defilers wanted to be pirates and then fight pirates, you know, I had to create that part of the world. So that's where we went to the Land of the South Winds, and then they were on a ship, and that took them to the Floanery Islands. Which are, by the way, based on my mom and dad's first name. My mom was Florence. My dad was Henry.
Little portmanteau. Take the two words, smash them together.
Yeah, and they sound cool.
Yeah, I mean, would never have known that had I not read that in my notes.
Well, just like so there was a point. Like, I'm really good at coming up with good sounding names, and for the most part, with a few exceptions like Zytikix and Riffs, which was a Kevin Long name. He created and named them, and I knew I should have changed them. No one can pronounce it. My dad used to call them city chicks. Where that came from, I don't know. Because they're these bug monsters that don't look like women or anything, or chickens. But so, you know, and plus, I like to have fun and some inside jokes. So one of the creatures in which I created for the Defilers, by the way, along with the Grimbor. The Grimbor was also throwback to my Defiler campaign. But the Timrak is a giant man-eating frog. I mean, giant, like the size of a Volkswagen or pickup truck. And it's Kermit spelled backwards.
I love finding little Easter eggs like that in game. And my two favorites are apparently the apocryphal story is that Melf in D&D, Melf's acid arrow, came from one of Gary's kids who, when he was asked his name, his dad put his character sheet together and he looked across the top of his character sheet and saw M elf for male elf and went Melf. And the other one is at the start of the wonderful Enemy Within campaign for Warhammer Fantasy. The first NPC you meet, or one of the first NPCs you meet, is Baron Saponathime.
Mm-hmm.
It's Baron Once Upon a Time. So you literally start with Once Upon a Time. I'm like, the first time I said it out loud, I was like, you guys got, like, immediately my players crack up. And I'm like, wait, what's going? Oh, come on.
I mean, you got to have fun with it.
Yeah. And they're inside jokes. And so the people that know them get them. And then as we share these stories, now more people are going to look at it and go, wait a second, what else can I find in here?
Yep. Just like a lot of people I knew or gamers that I played with, their names appear as some character in a book.
Oh, yeah.
Not usually a major character, but it's the guy who or girl who runs the inn, or is a retired mercenary or sorcerer or something, and it's just fun. It's just fun to do.
Well, they're little nods. They're hey, I appreciate you as a person or as a player. So if you get this and you see this, you're going to be like, oh, wait a second. Yeah. Well, anything else to say about the Old Ones or Adventures on the High Seas?
Both are among the best books I've ever written, I think.
Old Ones is spectacularly good. Just spectacularly good. I love that, like, cover to cover. One of my most used game supplements, not just in my Palladium games, but then as I went on to play D&D and all these other games, that just lives in the back of my head and kind of one of those things that percolates back up as I'm writing or creating new adventures.
Well, thank you. I like to think that it's, like I said, one of the best things I've written. The Monsters and Animal book is also just a fabulous resource. Like I said, for anything, it's got a great Keith Parkinson cover. Oh yeah,
the cover is great. Who did the updated cover for the second edition of the Old
High Seas? This is Dave Martin, excuse me, it was Dave Martin. Did some other artwork. This is Martin McKenna, which is a great piece.
Yeah,
I just love it. We had a previous Monsters and Animal cover that was great too, but this one's fabulous, and it's just a great resource. And there's a lot of cool art in it.
Oh yeah, I mean that's one of the things that I've always loved about Palladium books. There's a lot of great art in your material.
And I also want to point out that, and it's easier to see in an animal section, they all have maps of the world and where you can find them in there. So there's no question of, gee, can I find an African lion in the northern wilderness? No, unless it escaped from someone's personal collection or a zoo. And it's probably not going to survive those harsh winters.
Yeah.
I also want to point out that Matt Ballant is the guy who did most of the animals. This is the same gentleman who did most of the weapon books.
Yes.
So, he's a great researcher and likes to do different things. And then I'm an animal guy, so I went in and tweaked a few and stuff. And I'll look at some of the entries and I'm like, I don't know if I agree with that today. But, they're close enough, and it's going to do the job.
Yeah, and, 30 years of game design later, you may go, I would not build that the same way today
Yep.
as I did back then. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for doing this. Next time, we're going to talk about the Arms of Nagash-Tor and Valley of the Pharaohs. Looking forward to that.
Sounds good.